I used to laugh at women who stalked their husbands with GPS trackers. I thought, if you have to do that, your marriage is already dead. I didn't think I'd become one of them. And I definitely didn't think I'd find my best friend's address staring back at me from my husband's car history like a punch to the gut. It started with something small, doesn't it always? He came home late. Said he'd had a rough day at work and fell asleep on the couch in the break room. No texts. No calls. Just walked through the door at 6:45 a.m. smelling faintly of lavender and guilt. I didn't say anything at first. I let it slide. Maybe I didn't want to know. Maybe I still believed in us enough to lie to myself a little longer. But then it happened again. A week later. Same story. Same excuse. Same tired eyes and the same forced kiss on my cheek like he hadn't just disappeared for 12 hours. And then this is the part that still makes my stomach turn. My best friend Danielle dropped by the house that same morning, claiming she just wanted to borrow a book. Danielle, who doesn't read. Danielle, who had perfect hair at 7:15 in the morning and couldn't look me in the eye. I asked jokingly if she had a sleepover with anyone fun. She froze for a half second too long. That smile, that stupid plasticky Barbie smile she always had when she was lying, flickered and died for a moment. Then she laughed it off. That was the moment my brain started ticking. And once the ticking started, I couldn't shut it off. It's embarrassing how long it took me to remember that our SUV logs its GPS data. My husband's an anxious driver, always checking the app to find parking downtown. So I logged into the app just out of curiosity, just to prove myself wrong. And there it was. Parked. From 11:22 p.m. to 5:41 a.m. Danielle's street. Danielle's house. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Not moving. Just blinking. Like maybe if I looked away and refreshed the screen it would say something else. Like this was some kind of joke. Or maybe a glitch. Maybe a neighbor's house. Maybe he was just helping her with something. But deep down I knew. You don't help someone for 6 hours in the middle of the night and come home with a button missing from your shirt. I didn't confront him right away. I didn't scream or cry or break plates like some movie scene. I just sat there. Thinking. Remembering. Going through the last few months like a detective sifting through evidence that was always there, waiting. The way he pulled away when I touched him. The sudden gym membership. The extra cologne. How Danielle kept bringing him up in conversations she had no business inserting his name into. Logan's so funny. I wish I had someone like him. You know, Logan's really good at fixing things. Maybe he could take a look at my sink. I thought she was just being friendly. Flirty maybe, but harmless. She'd always been the type to flirt with anything that walked and breathed. But I was the one she called sister. I was the one who held her hair when she threw up after drinking too much wine. I was the one who stayed up all night with her when her fiancé dumped her via email. It took me days to work up the courage to ask him. Hey, I said over dinner, casually as I could. Where were you last Thursday night? He barely blinked. Work. I told you. All night. Yeah. Emergency rollout. We had to update the servers. Why? I smiled. I still don't know how I managed to smile. Weird. Because your GPS said you were parked at Danielle's house from 11 to 5. Silence. It was like a switch flipped. His entire face changed. Not fear. Not guilt. Just calculation. Seriously, he finally said. You're tracking me now? You lied to me. No, you invaded my privacy. He never denied it. Never said, that's wrong or that wasn't me. Just went on a whole tirade about trust and boundaries and how crazy I was becoming. I could feel the air draining out of the room. You know what's crazy? I whispered. Yufeng slept at my best friend's house and then came home to me like nothing happened. She was going through something, he shouted. She needed someone to talk to. And that someone had to be you? At midnight? In her bedroom. He stormed out, slammed the door, left me sitting at the dinner table, pasta turning cold, heart burning like it was being cauterized from the inside out. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. The next day, Danielle showed up at my job. She never visits my job. She had the audacity to bring coffee and act like nothing was wrong. Hey babe, she said with that same smile. You looked stressed yesterday, so I figured you could use a pick-me-up. I stared at the cup, wondered if she'd poisoned it. You slept with him, I said. The smile cracked. A little tremor in the hand holding the cup. What? Don't lie to me, Danielle. Just don't. He didn't even try to deny it. She sat down across from me, suddenly very quiet. And then she started crying. Real tears. Ugly sobbing. And that almost broke me because I'm the kind of person who always wants to comfort someone crying, even when they're the one who ripped out your spine and stomped on it. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said. It just was so kind to me and I was lonely and one night it just happened. And then it happened again. I was too stunned to speak. She kept going. He said he was going to leave you. He told me he was miserable. That you didn't love him anymore. That you didn't care. That's when I laughed. I actually laughed in her face. He said that? After I picked him up from bankruptcy? After I stayed with him through his mom dying, through his job loss, through his back surgery? He said I didn't love him. Danielle covered her face. I was stupid. I thought it meant something. But he stopped calling. He ghosted me after you asked him. My heart twisted in ways I didn't know it could. So he used you too, I said softly. We sat there in silence. 2 women. 1 broken man. That's when I made the decision. Not just to leave him. That was already set in stone. But to tell the world. To stop covering for men like him. To stop being embarrassed like I had done something wrong. 'Cause I didn't. He did. They both did. But at least one of them had the decency to admit it. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. And that's when twist number 2 hit me like a truck. Logan showed up at my door with a suitcase and tears in his eyes. I made a mistake, he said. I stared at the man I used to love. The man who used to make me laugh until I couldn't breathe. The man who used to kiss my forehead every night before bed. You made a choice, I said. Now live with it. And I closed the door. But part of me still wonders. What if I hadn't checked the GPS? What if I just kept believing his lies? What if that little digital trail hadn't exposed the ugliest truth? I guess the better question is, am I the asshole for finding out the truth the only way he couldn't lie about? When I shut that door, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the end of my marriage, it was the end of how I saw myself. I'd spent years being the understanding wife, the fixer, the forgiver. But now, I was just done. I thought he'd vanish after that, lick his wounds in silence. But I underestimated how persistent someone can be when they realize the well they've poisoned is the only one that ever really cared about them. First came the texts, paragraphs of regret, apologies, gaslighting dressed up as clarity. You pushed me away first. It wasn't even about sex. I needed connection. You and Danielle both manipulated me. That one made me laugh out loud. Manipulated him? As if 2 women with full-time jobs, emotional trauma, and zero tolerance left were conspiring over coffee to seduce and betray the man-child who once cried because I bought the wrong kind of peanut butter. Then came the letters. Handwritten. Tear-stained. He even tried to leave a bouquet of my favorite sunflowers at my work. But by then, the front desk knew not to let him past the lobby. Danielle, for her part, disappeared. Blocked me. Moved out of her apartment 2 months later. Word around town was she transferred to another office in Oregon. Ran away probably. I don't blame her. Our city's too small to hide in. But just when I thought I could start breathing again, really breathing, I got a phone call that froze the blood in my veins. It was Logan's mother. You have to understand something about her. Judith was never a warm woman. She raised Logan like a show dog, groomed, corrected, displayed. She saw me as beneath him from day one. And yet, when her name flashed on my screen, I felt this sharp pang of worry. I still cared against my will. I answered. Her voice was different. Shaky. Quiet. He's in the hospital, she said. He took something. Pills. A lot of them. The room spun. I sank into the couch. Is he okay? I asked before I could stop myself. They pumped his stomach. He's stable now. She paused. He asked for you. I didn't respond. I'm not saying you have to come, she said finally. But he's hurting. I thought you should know. I sat there for hours. Heart twisting. Mind racing. Not because I missed him. But because, damn it, I'm still human. Eventually I went. Not for him. For myself. To face the mess. To see it. He looked like a ghost in that hospital bed. Pale. Sunken eyes. Hooked up to wires like a dying robot. When he saw me, he cried. Real tears. Not performative ones. And maybe that's what scared me the most. There was no audience this time. I didn't know how to live without you, he said. I didn't touch him. Didn't cry. You were already living without me, I replied. You just didn't notice until the silence got loud. He nodded. I messed up. I sighed. No, Logan. You destroyed something. There's a difference. He closed his eyes. Whispered. I know. That was the last time I saw him. It's been 8 months now. Divorce finalized. I moved to a different part of town. Different job. Therapy every Thursday. My world is smaller now, quieter, but it's mine. The pain hasn't disappeared. I still flinch when I smell his cologne on strangers. Still delete old photos when I stumble across them on my phone. But the difference is I'm not waiting for the pain to pass. I'm walking through it. And somewhere in all of this, something unexpected happened. One night after therapy, I stopped by a quiet coffee shop I never used to visit. I sat alone, sipping a chamomile tea and sketching in my journal. That's when a voice asked if the seat across from me was taken. It was a man, late 30s maybe. Wore glasses, looked like he read more than he talked. I shook my head, let him sit. We didn't talk much. But when I stood up to leave, he said something that stuck with me. You seem like someone who had to build herself back from ashes. I smiled, surprised. How could you tell? He just shrugged. Phoenixes leave behind a particular kind of smoke. We've met for tea every Wednesday since. We don't talk about relationships. We talk about books, music, grief, life. It's not romance, at least not yet. It's just peace. And that's something I never thought I'd have again. But I promised you a twist, didn't I? 3 weeks ago, I got an anonymous envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a USB stick and a single note. You deserve to know the whole truth. I should have thrown it away. Should have burned it. But curiosity has claws. I plugged it in. There were videos, audio clips, screenshots, all from Danielle's phone. Somehow someone had either cloned it or stolen backups. What I saw made my stomach twist. Danielle had been recording everything. Not just her time with Logan, but their conversations. And it turns out Logan had told her I was abusive, manipulative, controlling, that I cheated, that I'd ruined him financially, that he was just trying to survive. He even told her that I hit him once, which never ever happened. She cried in the audio, begged him to leave me, offered to help him get legal advice. In one clip he laughed and said, "You're so much easier to handle than her. So much more obedient." Obedient. Like she was a dog. I sat there in stunned silence. Heart pounding. He hadn't just cheated. He hadn't just lied. He had engineered everything. Told her what she needed to hear. Crafted a version of himself that would make her fall in love and justify betraying me. And when the guilt caught up with her, he vanished. He manipulated her. Just like he manipulated me. Suddenly I didn't hate Danielle anymore. I pitied her. I never found out who sent the USB. Maybe it was Danielle trying to make peace from afar. Maybe someone else. Doesn't matter. What matters, ISI finally saw it clearly. I was never crazy. I was never overreacting. I was just the only one paying attention. So no, I'm not the asshole for checking his GPS. I'm not the villain for trusting my gut. I'm just the woman who found her way back from the fire. I didn't sleep the night I watched those videos. I just sat there numb, tired, angry, and disturbingly calm. How many years of my life had I spent trying to understand him? How many times had I twisted my own feelings into knots to make excuses for his behavior? I used to think we were partners, that we were weathering storms together. But the truth was far darker. He was never in the storm with me. He was the storm. When the sun came up, I wasn't crying. I didn't feel broken. I felt powerful. Like someone had handed me the last missing puzzle piece and I finally saw the full picture. I wasn't just walking away from a failed marriage anymore. I was walking away from delusion, from gaslighting, From years of emotional erosion so slow and quiet I didn't notice until I was already crumbling. And that made me ask the question I had been avoiding. Why did I let it get this far? It's easy to play victim and say, he fooled me. And yes, he did. But I also allowed pieces of myself to be shaved off one compromise at a time. I let him talk me out of my instincts. I let him label my discomfort as insecurity. I let him make me feel grateful for bare minimum affection. So I started making a list. A literal list. Of every time I silenced my own voice for his comfort. Every red flag I painted white. Every moment I let something slide that shouldn't have. By the end of it I had 4 pages. Front and back. My therapist read it with wide eyes and whispered, "You should turn this into a book. Maybe I will someday. But for now I turned it into something else. Closure." And the man from the coffee shop, the quiet one with the phoenix metaphor? His name is Simon. And he's become a kind of mirror I never had before. He never tries to fix me. Never rushes me. Never makes my pain about him. One afternoon I told him everything. Not just about Logan but about the way I'd shrunk myself over the years. The way I wore silence like armor. He didn't pity me. He didn't interrupt. He just looked at me and said, "No wonder your fire scares people." That night he walked me to my car, and before I got in he asked, "Can I show you something?" He pulled out his phone and opened a note. It was a poem he'd written months ago about a woman made of ash and iron, who learned to breathe fire again. "I didn't know your story then," he said. "But I think I was writing about you." I didn't kiss him. I didn't need to. Because sometimes intimacy isn't about lips meeting. It's about souls recognizing each other in the quiet. That's the twist no one tells you about healing. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes, it's a Tuesday afternoon in a coffee shop where someone finally sees you without asking you to explain. But healing isn't linear. About a month after that, I saw Logan again by accident. He was at the pharmacy. Alone. He looked smaller. Not physically but spiritually. Like someone who'd been humbled by their own reflection. He saw me. Our eyes locked for a second. And in that second, 1,000 memories collided between us. The vacations. The laughter. The betrayals. The hospital. The lies. He opened his mouth to say something. But I shook my head gently. Not out of anger. Out of peace. I didn't need an apology anymore. I didn't need him to understand what he broke. Because I had finally forgiven myself for letting him break it. Forgiveness, it turns out, isn't always something you give to others. Sometimes it's the gift you give to the parts of yourself you abandoned. I walked out of that pharmacy with my head high. Not victorious. Just free. And later that night I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to Logan. Not to Danielle. To the woman I used to be. Dear me. I'm sorry I didn't leave sooner. I'm sorry I confused love with loyalty. I'm sorry I let someone else write the story of my worth. But thank you for surviving. Thank you for not giving up on joy. Thank you for still choosing to believe in people. You're not broken. You're becoming. I put that letter in a small wooden box along with my wedding ring, an old photo of Danielle and me, and the GPS printout that changed everything. My past isn't a secret anymore. It's a chapter, not the whole book. But there's one more thread to this story I haven't told. Danielle reached out. It was 2 weeks ago. Late at night. A message request from a new account. No profile picture. Just her name and a single sentence. "Can I talk to you?" My first instinct was to block it. To protect the peace I'd worked so hard to build. But something told me to open it. She apologized. Genuinely. Thoroughly. Not in that half-hearted sorry you feel that way kind of way, but with self-awareness that only comes from sitting in your own consequences. She told me she spent months in therapy, that her relationships fell apart, that she had to look in the mirror and accept that she betrayed someone who would have walked through fire for her. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I just needed you to know I'm trying to become someone who would never do that again." I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about all the nights I cried over what she'd done, the mornings I cursed her name in my head, the spiral of trust issues I still fight through. But I also remember the girl I used to beta one who gave people second chances when they truly earned them. So I replied, "Thank you for saying that. I wish you healing and peace." That was it. No closure coffee. No dramatic reunion. Just two women acknowledging the ruins and walking away from them in opposite directions. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing more than, I survived you, and I still choose kindness. So if you're reading this wondering if you're the asshole for snooping, for asking questions, for demanding honesty, you're not. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not too much. You are enough. And you deserve a love that doesn't require surveillance. Check the GPS. Read between the lines. Listen to your gut. Because the truth always finds its way out, sometimes through broken trust, sometimes through a blinking on a digital map. And when it does, may you have the strength to walk away. Not just from them, but from the version of yourself that thought you had to stay. A few days after Danielle's message, I was invited to speak at a small local women's event, nothing big. Just a panel called Finding Yourself Again After Betrayal. I almost said no. I didn't want to be known as the woman whose husband cheated with her best friend. I didn't want that to be my headline. But then I remembered how alone I felt the night I saw that GPS pin. How I thought I must be imagining things. How shame tried to make me silent. So I said yes. There were maybe 40 women in that room. All different ages. Different stories. But the same bruises, emotional ones you can't see. I told them what happened. From the beginning. I didn't sanitize it. I didn't spare the ugly parts. I told them about the missed signs, the late-night GPS scroll, the confrontation, the hospital, the betrayal, the silence that followed. And then I told them about the moment I stopped asking why he did it and started asking why I stayed. Afterward, a woman in her 60s came up to me with tears in her eyes. You just told my story, she said. I wasted 28 years waiting for him to change. You left in one. We hugged. Two strangers bonded not by pain, but by the decision to end it. That's the thing no one tells you about choosing yourself. It's not glamorous. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It comes in quiet moments. Decisions made in silence. Tiny acts of rebellion against the version of yourself that was taught to tolerate. But those tiny acts, they add up. You wake up one morning and realize you're no longer bracing for emotional whiplash. You stop apologizing for your standards. You breathe deep, guilt-free breaths. And eventually, you stop surviving and start living. That's where I am now. Not healed. Not perfect. But whole. Simon and I still meet for tea. Some days we talk for hours. Other days we just sit. He's never pushed for more, but he's made it clear. Whenever you're ready, I'm here. Maybe we'll become something more. Maybe we won't. But either way, I'm not afraid to find out. Because I finally trust myself again. I trust my gut. I trust my patterns. I trust that I'll never stay silent again. The other day, I passed by my old neighborhood. Just driving through, windows down, the radio humming. I saw the street where Danielle lived. The stop sign where Logan used to wait to turn left onto our block. I didn't flinch. I didn't ache. I just exhaled. That place isn't home anymore. Because home is not a person. It's not an address. It's peace. And I carry it with me now. In the way I speak. In the way I say no. In the way I love myself even on the days it's hard. People ask me if I'd take Logan back if he really changed. Here's the thing. I don't wish him harm. I hope he finds his own path to healing. I hope he becomes a better man. For himself. For whoever comes next. But I will never open that door again. Because the cost of letting him back in is the version of myself I fought to reclaim. And she is far too precious to gamble. So, no, I wasn't the asshole for checking his GPS. I was the woman who stopped being gaslit. The woman who realized that silence protects no one but the liar. The woman who stopped begging for love and started choosing herself. And if you're reading this, holding your breath, wondering whether your gut is trying to warn you, listen. Not because you're paranoid. Not because you're broken. But because your soul knows something your brain hasn't admitted yet. I didn't write this to get sympathy. I wrote it so the next woman maybe you would know she isn't crazy. She isn't alone. And she doesn't have to stay. Here's what I've learned. If love requires you to erase parts of yourself, if loyalty means betraying your own intuition, if comfort comes only after swallowing your pride again and again, that is not love. That is survival. And you deserve so much more than survival. You deserve joy. You deserve truth. You deserve to sleep at night without checking his location history. So check the GPS. Ask the hard question. Break the silence. And when you Dowhen, the truth hits you like a freight train. When the world you built crumbles under the weight of betrayal, remember this. You are not weak for walking away. You are brave for choosing yourself. And in the end, that's what this story is about. Not the affair. Not the lie. But the woman who refused to stay small. The woman who found herself not in his arms, but in the ashes of what he burned down. And from those ashes, she rose.